talk about edible landscaping.
My dad was always a landscaping sort of a guy. He'd put different tropical plants together and let them make an interesting mix. You could see there's irises and mother-in-law tongues and what are they, those arrow leaf plants, some hibiscus. It's got bits of salvia and other things growing together. But over time, he started to embrace the whole food forest and growing your own food concept. So this is a jabuticaba tree, which is starting to grow up here bit by bit. This is a Natal plum, which makes a good edible fruit. So there's getting to be more food. You can see there, that's a flamboyant tree, also known as a poinciana. But over here, this is a tamarind tree that we planted. Now, I didn't tell Dad when I planted it that these things can get up to 100 foot tall. I mean, that sort of information, you don't really need to share that much. I just told Dad that his friends at the Chinese church where he would teach would really appreciate some of this tamarind. The Chinese make candy out of it. And I came, and this is, if you could see right up here, let me zoom in. Right up here, there are tamarind actually growing on this tree. This is the first I've seen him make any. But this tree here, when we put it in, was about 4 foot tall. And you see how Dad, he just put a nice little ring around it. This is a South Florida front yard. I mean, a nice little Fort Lauderdale street. And here you've got this awesome, beautiful tamarind tree making food. And Dad keep the grass up nice and all that sort of thing. And so nobody knows that it's fruit trees who's necessarily growing food. If you see this front yard, you say, ah, that's a pretty good looking little landscaped yard. But bit by bit, Dad's been putting in food where you don't even see it necessarily. You wouldn't recognize it. This is a canistel tree. It's another very good fruit. I got this one as a little seedling and gave it to Dad, and he planted it in here. Eventually that'll start making fruit. And if we come over here, here's another thing Dad did. We would go on vacation up to North Carolina, where my grandparents had a cabin up there, and he would pick up pieces of flagstone and build little pathways with them, which down here in Florida, I mean, this is the place of coral and seashells, but Dad loved that northern look. Here we've got the acerola cherry, aka Barbados cherry. This is a kind of an everbearing one. There's always a few fruit on it, but at some times of the year, this thing has so much fruit. And you can see it's not a bad looking tree. And again, Dad put the little ring around the bottom. He mowed up to it nicely, and it just sort of fits into the front yard. Along here, they're dormant right now, and there's some weeds that have gotten in here. Dad got the yard about halfway cleaned up. Down in here, there are gingers that will pop up every once in a while, and they're asleep. Most of them are asleep right now. There's a turmeric right there. And here's the tropical almond tree that we planted, which has edible fruit. Dad has been keeping this thing pruned so it stays away from the house. I planted this from a seedling a few years ago. It was 2 inches tall when I put it in. Like, it just sprouted and I planted it. There it goes, blooming. Tropical almond is not the best edible in the world because it's kind of a little bit of work to do, but it's a beautiful beech tree and it's common in this area. Down at the base of it, we've got yams growing. These yams are coming back and they climb the tree. So you're getting you're stacking here with the vines and the edible tree. And the tree also makes a lot of leaves and drops them, which you can use for composting. See down here, these are antlions. If you can see, there's actually, there's a little creature that lives in the bottom there, and it throws sand around and catches ants. They like to be in the shade because their little ant traps here do not get rained on terribly. So you'll see, particularly in South Florida, where we've got sandy soil, see, this is like Death Valley for ants. Any one of these things, there is a little terrifying creature that looks like that thing from The Wrath of Khan where they stuck it in Chekhov's ear. Yeah, it's terrible. I watched that when I was a kid. Anyhow, these guys here build, and there's an insect in the bottom of that one. And the antlion will throw sand at it and try and knock it back down, and then it'll grab it and eat it. And eventually the antlion will pupate and become a flying creature, which goes and lays its eggs elsewhere. and then the cycle continues. This is natural fire ant control right here. Here we've got just a little Turk's cap hibiscus and some Haitian basket vine, which is actually a weed on my new property. It's amazing. And then back here is the food forest in the area that my beautiful sister-in-law Danielle and I just cleared up here for Mom. That's Mom's annual garden, but again, it's you know, the wrong time of year for that. Here in Florida, you don't grow annuals right now, for the most part. I wanted you guys to see how you can tuck in some edibles into your yard and make it actually work well. You wouldn't know, but there are multiple fruit trees and edible things right here in this normal looking front yard. So, thanks for joining me. Till next time, may your thumbs always be green.
I went to see David the Good. We listened to Portishead and drank spiced rum.
That Terminator is out there, and it absolutely will not stop, ever!